Hey everybody, this is Brett Grayson of Tactical Pay Radio, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, living proof that without practice, there's no limit to how little you can accomplish, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. All right, before we get started, I want to tell you about GlockTriggers.com. Recently, at a sanctioned IDPA match, I went to the line, I went to load and make ready, and the little dingus thing flew out of my trigger. Just completely flew out of the gun. So I had to scramble and shoot the stage with a backup gun. So now I'm in the market for a new trigger, and guess what I found? GlockTriggers.com. Love them or hate them, the one thing that you know about Glock pistols is their reliability. They're out of the box, to the range, to the match, absolutely reliable. And it's what makes them popular with competitors like myself, law enforcement, military, and responsible citizens. But the one drawback is that stock trigger. Well, Jeff Wilson and the people at Glock Triggers, they asked themselves, how can we make this better? But how can we do it while maintaining reliability? Using stock parts as their foundation, they refine the interaction of the metal parts in the trigger kit to give you smoother take-up, a cleaner break, and reduced over travel without sacrificing safety or reliability. That's important. Recommended and used by people like Bob Vogel, Travis Haley, and Ken Hackathorn. Glock Triggers custom trigger kits come with a lifetime warranty and a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. Check out the Edge, the Vogel, the Skimmer, the Guardian, or the Hackathorn trigger system and use the promo code from this podcast, USC20, and save 20% off your entire order. GlockTriggers.com, the highest quality drop-in trigger system for your Glock. Our special guest today is Eric Daniels from Chillicothe, Ohio. Eric, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what you do for a living there in Chillicothe.
In Chillicothe, well, I actually work for a Southwest Ohio municipality. Have been employed for 2 years as a jack of all trades. Current position is systems administrator, and I also wear a second hat as a police officer and rangemaster for a municipal police department.
Where did the interest in guns come from? Did you grow up around guns? You're in the southern part of the state, so you're not in Columbus or Cleveland or Cincinnati. Did you grow up learning about guns, hunting? Where did the interest in guns come from?
Well, actually, probably about 1987 when I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps Delayed Entry Program, and I entered the Marine Corps in 1988. So I guess that would be where my interest in firearms first began.
No guns in the home growing up?
Yes, very limited though. Single family or single parent type situation, raised by my mother. She did, when I first gained an interest in joining the Marine Corps, I did ask for a handgun. So she was agreeable to having a gun in the house so I could get some training. So,
right.
Had a friend of the family show me, the ins and outs of firearms, safety. And then that was short-lived because within 6 months I entered the Marine Corps boot camp.
Right. Well, thank you for your service, by the way. I do appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you.
After you got out, I guess, how did you get introduced to competitive shooting?
In the mid-'90s, I liked high-powered rifle shooting, but, not very many places around my area of the state that, short of Camp Perry, of course, to engage in high-power rifle shooting. So I was looking for competitive shooting, and I always had an interest in IPSC USPSA, but I didn't know quite how to get into it. So I never really actually got into it too much. And then in 2006, 2007, I learned of IDPA, and I started shooting at a local match in late 2006. So I had
Gotcha.
several years of gap there, but I always got plenty of firearms training in my profession, both
Right.
state and local level. So I always had opportunities to shoot, but never competitively, because there just wasn't very many venues for it.
Right. So, do you remember that first IDPA match?
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's kind of awakening. You think you know, and you really don't. And then, you go to a match, and when that buzzer goes off, you just forget what your name is. And,
Yep.
the match jitters. Once you get over the match jitters, the people were great. I didn't do too bad. Upper third maybe placement. So I'd been doing a lot of shooting, but just shooting in law enforcement, military, as compared to shooting competitively, is totally night and day. So yeah, I
Right.
remember my first match. Wasn't bad. I wasn't disqualified. I was safe. So it was a positive experience, and I attribute that to the folks running the match.
I shoot with members of law enforcement. I've got good friends who are in law enforcement who shoot IDPA, but I've seen a lot of law enforcement officers who will come to an IDPA match and then never come back. What is it about this, coming out to an IDPA match where, like you said, it's very different from what you experienced in law enforcement and in the military? What is it about that experience that is intimidating for somebody who's willing to go kick down a door, and face actual gunfire?
I can talk about this forever. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People, especially in law enforcement, they're type A's. They think that they are better than they truly are. And I attribute that to lack of preparation based upon department budgetary constraints. They don't get the necessary training that they really need. And then, they embark on, hey, I want to go shoot because I carry this thing for 40 hours a week.
Right.
I'm proficient. Then they get the rude awakening. And then that ego pops, and you can usually hear it, usually about 3 or 4 seconds after the buzzer. And, the type A personalities, especially in law enforcement, they can't deal with it, and they don't come back. It usually, even though their match experience may be a positive one, they may be placed well, but it's a turnoff to their ego. I mean, people,
Right.
you want to think you're better than you really are. And, and they just think, that they carry this gun for 40 hours a week. They've had all this high-speed training, but they only shoot 25 rounds a year. Then they come out here on a competitive nature, and people shooting hundreds or thousands of rounds per month. And, it's an experience. And that's,
Right.
I've talked to them. I've got a lot of friends who shoot IDPA who are in law enforcement, and I always have to coach them back. You get better, you'll get better, you'll get better. But that's
Right.
in my take, being on both ends, being a match director, running the matches, and then training these folks. That's what happens.
And it's hard to not try to compare yourself to other people too, right? So you walk out there and you're used to, you think you're the best, and then, the 4'5" woman next to you or the guy in the skinny jeans just smokes you.
Yes.
Yeah, that can be hard on the ego.
It is crushing. And, a lot of times, schedules, revolving shift, rotating shifts. A lot of times the officers don't have the time. And if they do have the time, they choose to spend it with the family. And, you got monetary constraints too. It's not their priority. Where, if you're a competitive shooter, it's our priority. We live, eat, and breathe it. We love it. We sacrifice and eat ramen noodles to buy ammo. Whereas, your run-of-the-mill law enforcement officer doesn't necessarily do that. But they get that suspicion that, let's go see how I size. And case in point, a couple years ago, we had Ohio State Trooper come out. And he told me, he goes, I just want to come out to see how I size up, how I compare. He came out one match.
Right.
So I guess, and it's, it's that Dunning-Kruger effect. And, I like to attribute that term to, I learned that term actually from Chuck Haggard. I don't know if you're familiar with Chuck Haggard, but he's big, he's a pretty renowned trainer, and he likes bringing up that effect. And it is so relevant in today's law enforcement. You just in it, you're a concealed carrier. Everybody, those who don't train but carry, because they think that they're going to rise to that occasion, where they're just going to default to their level of proficiency. It's just that we think we're better than we are, and that's why they don't come back.
Yep. It's a whole different kind of shooting too. You just, like you said, as soon as the buzzer goes off, everything changes.
Yeah, what I call the buzzer, the lie detector. I can draw in a second. Well, let's find out.
Can you really? Right.
Can you really? Yeah.
How long after that first experience in 2006 at the local match? How long after that before you got up the nerve to try a sanction match?
I think my first sanction match was the Ohio State match in 2008.
And what do you remember of that experience?
That's pretty good. I worked it. So, it's any sanction match is an experience. It's not just an experience for the shooting, but it's to meet the people. Mm-hmm. And, I really enjoy the sport. I enjoy those involved in the sport. And I liked it. Did I place well? Nah, not really. But, I'd only been competitively shooting for about a year and a half, and I wasn't really that serious. I wasn't practicing. My monthly practice was my monthly local match.
Right.
And it wasn't until a couple years, 2, 3, 4 years ago that I actually got serious in the sport. So, it took me a while. But, I loved the sanction matches. But my first sanction match was the 2008 Ohio State match, followed by the West Virginia State match.
And you are the match director for your home club. Give your home club a little shout out.
Yes, the Clinton County Farmers and Sportsmen Association in Wilmington, Ohio. How
long have you been doing that?
I am starting my 12th year as match director.
Good. So how did you get involved at that level? That's another big step from, well, by 2008, 2 years in, you were already working matches. Had you taken on the role of match director at that point, or were you?
It was shortly thereafter. Our current match director was running 3-gun, was the rifle pistol committee chair. So he had a lot of coals in the fire, and he was just looking for. I think he was just looking for a break. And he saw, I guess, that I was pretty interested. So, I was involved in this setup and tear down, and he was running squads. I think I just became a safety officer. So by the end of my first year, they approached me and asked me if I wanted to take over the match.
Very cool. So, and you're now the state coordinator for Ohio.
Yes, I was appointed state coordinator, I think, August or September of last year.
Talk about the responsibilities of a state coordinator and what that role has been like for you.
It's a busy one. While with the role of the state coordinator is relatively new, as you and I both know.
Right.
Getting the word out that there are state coordinators and area coordinators. So it's getting the word out, getting known. I've had several clubs contact me, regarding potential of holding sanction matches, safety officer classes, so on and so forth. You just got to try to reach out and try to promote the sport and try to get growth. I've talked to a couple clubs who hopefully want to affiliate in the near future. So, it's just trying to grow the sport and be there and answer the questions.
What's the competitive shooting scene like in Ohio? There hasn't been an Ohio match in a few years. What's the culture like there in terms of interest in the sport, and how is that changing?
We have several active clubs. IDPA is active, especially in the Cincinnati area, where I primarily shoot with the crowd from the Cincinnati area. Circleville, Columbus area has got a really large club. Ashland Lake's got a big presence. In terms of a sanction match, that is a huge undertaking. And it's getting that club to stand up and say, hey, we want to hold it. But yet, this is what it takes to hold the match. Because you got to have a lot of administrative support. You have to have a lot of physical labor, too. So I'm in talks with a club up north, and hopefully we will have a sanction match in 2020. But that's in the very beginnings of planning. So nothing concrete there.
Awesome. Let's talk about your shooting again. Let's get back to your personal experience. What division are you? What's your favorite, and what are you competing in most often?
My favorite today is PCC. I've got bit by the PCC bug of recent months. Predominantly, I'm a SSP shooter. I'm classified all the divisions except for carry optics and revolver. But right now, through next week, I'm shooting the Rocky Top.
Oh,
Next
nice.
week, and I'll be shooting PCC down there. That'll be my first sanction match shooting the carbine. And then once I get through that match, I'll probably revert back to carry optics. Something new. Something new.
Right. So, what was it? Tell us about a recent match that you were involved in, how that went, and what you thought of the match.
Well, we actually, surprisingly, being in Ohio, you never know what weather you're going to get from day to day.
Right.
We did have the opportunity to shoot through the winter, with the exception, I think, of December. So we did shoot a match last month, and it goes pretty well. Your numbers are up and down, but trigger time's trigger time. So being able to shoot in February and March in Ohio is an undertaking. So.
What is a typical season for you like? You've got Indiana next door. You've got Pennsylvania. You've got you've got sanctioned matches around you. What's the typical range for you, and what's a typical number of sanctioned matches that you try to make?
Pretty much east of the Mississippi is my ballpark that I try to stay within. For the last couple years, I've taken a kind of a break from the sanctioned matches just for time constraints and family. So beginning last year, I actually got back into the sanctioned match scene. Last year, I shot nationals. I worked at nationals. This year, I plan the Rocky Top now, and then as the summer unfolds and my scheduling unfolds, where I can actually plan, I do plan a couple other sanctioned matches through the year, and hope to participate in the Worlds.
What was your experience like at nationals last year?
I was a safety officer for stages 7 and 8, Bay 4. Spent a wonderful week down in Talladega. Probably one of my best weeks of shooting in my career, and I've been shooting since 1987. Talladega CMP Park is absolutely beautiful. That is the nicest range I've ever seen or shot at in my life. Folks were great. Headquarters, rolled out the red carpet for all the staff down there. I had a great time. They made sure that everything was taken care of, because if you participated, you know what the weather was like. It was hot. I've never been so hot in my life. And they made sure that we were hydrated. George and Dee Dee Carter made sure that everybody was taken care of. It was just great experience.
All right, so you know what all the previous questions you kind of everyone knows what the standard set of questions are. So I've got a new little something that I like to call pick your poison. So I'm going to throw a couple of things at you here related to your shooting and your preferences in shooting. You pick one or the other and explain why. We just talked about the weather. Freezing cold match or scorching hot, which do you prefer? 30 degrees or 100 if you had to choose?
30 degrees. Because you can always stay warm. You can layer clothes. You can get hand warmers. You can wear coats. And I'm from Ohio, and I've shot in 30 degrees, so it's not a big deal. But you can't run from that hot.
Nope. There's only so much you can take off and still be legal.
Exactly. So I'd rather shoot in the cold any day.
Standard stage, first stage of the match or last? Which do you prefer?
Last. If I had an Achilles heel, it's always standard stages. Static shooting is my Achilles heel. I'd rather be shooting and moving. Whenever you have me shoot weekend at 7 yards, it's my Achilles heel. I'd rather be shooting field stage with lots of movement, lots of swingers, drop turners. That's where I tend to do better. You get me flat-footed shooting, I just fall apart.
You don't have enough points to choose your day at nationals or at Worlds, and your only option is 16 stages in one day in Talladega. Do you do it, or do you hold off till next year?
Wow, I've seen both groups. That 18 stage group on one day, I felt so sorry for them. It's an opportunity. I'm at the level, I'm not going to win. You know what I'm saying? I'm there for the experience. Right. I'm there for the camaraderie. I'm there to shoot. I want to do it. If I have to, I'd rather shoot the 2 day, but if I had to shoot the 1 day, but I tell you, one of my close buddies came down from Ohio at nationals, and he was one of those that had to shoot the entire match in 1 day. And we talked about it, and I just didn't know how he did it. But, it's your priorities. Do you want the experience? Are you there to win it? Or are you there for the experience? For me, it's for the
Right.
experience.
A wide open 20 to 25 yard target stage, no non-threats, or close targets with lots of non-threats, like inside of 10 yards and tons of non-threats.
Give me the non-threats in 10 yards. I can move. I'm usually not known for a non-threat killer, but except for nationals, I did get one. I think everybody got one in nationals, but
I think
now
from what I heard, everyone got one in
you know what? I think Seth Hayden did most of the course designs, and yeah, he's pretty slick. I think everybody, if you got through there unscathed, you're something else. But no, give me close up and non-threats. I'll deal with it.
Which rule change in 2017 had the biggest impact on your game? 1 point per second or reloading out in the open?
Oh, 1 point per second. I got to slow down now. That points down add up quick. I mean, yeah, really. And the down zero in the head box really woke a lot of people up too. But the 1 second, and I like it. I mean, it forces you to be accountable for every round. I mean, it's the spirit of the sport.
Yep. Stow and go stage, right? You got you start with the gun and the magazine separately in front of you. You got to stow before you advance to the next position of cover. Do you stow your mags in your mag pouches or in a pocket?
I'm going for a pocket.
Do you do it in the vest?
Yes. Got a bigger opportunity, bigger hole to hit. my left breast pocket on my vest is pretty large as compared to my magazine pouch. Bigger, less opportunity to fumble.
Yep. Do you have any issues retrieving the mags to reload?
No. I practice them.
Yep. That always helps. What is this practice thing you speak of? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I shoot 3 days a week.
You come to a position of low cover and you've got the choice. You can shoot over the top, near to far, or around, slicing the pie. Which do you choose?
Whichever's quicker. I mean, you got to understand, they always say, don't shoot over top of cover. That's tactically sound. But, when it comes to points and seconds, it's still a game. So if it's in the
still
course
a game.
If it's permissible, I'm going to shoot where I can save most time.
All right. So here's the question that you've heard, the crazy question that I'm getting better answers on as we go along. Besides the usual stuff, right? The holster, the mag carrier, the eye and ear protection, all that good stuff. Do you have an item that you always make sure you put in the range bag for a match, and why?
An identical firearm.
Identical?
To the one that I'm shooting, yes. Especially for sanction matches. Because you see a lot being a match director shooting sanction matches. I've seen people invested heavily in sanction matches, and they go and something happens. Inevitably, something happens. I've seen it 2 or 3 times in nationals, and it gets reinforced. I always have an exact duplicate of my primary firearm that I'm using for competition. Because you're very heavily vested, and especially sanction matches. Hotel, match fees, travel, so on and so forth. Last thing you want to do is have something so simple as a parts failure break your whole day.
Yep.
So if you can pick up another, you can't salvage the stage, but you can still salvage the match by swapping out.
Now you said you made the switch to you've gotten bitten by the bug, the PCC bug. What is it about PCC that you like, and what is the challenge to making that transition from the handgun to the long gun?
It's different. It reinvigorated, some lost interest. You get kind of stuck in a rut when you've been doing it as long as I have. I've been, match directing, so on and so forth. You get stuck in a rut. It almost becomes a job. With the PCC, being widely accepted now, not something new. Plus, in my career, I do train law enforcement. It gives me any time that I can get more long gun experience at a cheaper cost, being pistol caliber as opposed to 5.56. I'm going to embrace it, and it really has assisted my progression in long gun manipulation. I'm a better AR-15 shooter. I'm a better instructor for my department based upon more time with the long gun. Even though we're in law enforcement, our primary gun is the handgun. You still, it's something that you don't practice enough. and it's an
Right.
opportunity. It's an opportunity, but the main thing is something new. It reinvigorated my interest in the sport. Something else to master,
Yep.
and it's been a learning curve. Let me tell you.
I bet.
Yeah, yeah.
I like I told Kitty, I'm thinking this year I may try some different things, and that's one of the ones I want to give a try to, and just because it would be different from what I've been doing for several years now, just to experience it and to be able to talk about it more knowledgeably. I think it would be a fun diversion.
And it's great, and it's gaining popularity in Southwest Ohio. I think the more people see others using it, shooting it, that and carry optics is coming along. Everyone was worried, was PCC and carry optics going to be, you know, adopted, by more shooters, and it slowly is gaining a popularity in our area.
I was one who, when the rule first came out, hated the whole idea, but I've warmed to it as time's gone on. So
Many of my friends that know me, I resisted it as well till I got bit. I tried it once. I said, this is fun. So, I was one of those who was resistant to the change. We don't like change,
Yeah.
and, and ironically in a local group, it was brought up, PCC should be just totally listed in a separate, scoring category because, their times is always going to be better. You got, it is so much different, and it's changed. This is something we just got to embrace if we're going to grow as a sport.
I don't like the idea of mixing the results together with the
Exactly.
pistol stuff, but
that's what.
But I think it's good for the sport.
Yes, it is, and and a lot of the scoring softwares is partially to, a lot of the friction is coming. It's not so much scoring them together. It's just the way, I'm not going to name any scoring softwares, but I think everyone listening is going to know where I'm going. But, everything is from least, the quickest, the slowest times, and regardless of division, and if we would break away from that, I think a lot of the resistance would be lessened. If we would, if a lot of the more popular scoring software would break it down by time, by division, rather than overall. Because I think, as a sport, we're starting to place too much emphasis of the overall time, regardless of division. And I think
I think
we're losing.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, because it's kind of the reverse of what happens with people who try Revolver. Right? They go out and they try a Revolver and they see, and then they try to compare their score to what they're used to or to other people shooting semi-autos, and they go, "Good grief, I'm so slow." Yeah. Well, of course you are. It's a completely different gun.
Exactly.
So
and you
can't compare the handgun
to the carbine because you don't have to reload unless the course of fire mandates a reload. So you don't have any reload. You're going to be, seconds faster by default because more points of contact. It's easier. You got shooting the same caliber with a 7-pound rifle. So it's not apples to apples.
Yeah. As we wrap things up here, what is it that has taken you from showing up to your first local match and then getting into working matches to directing matches for your local club for 12 years to taking on the role of state coordinator and safety officer instructor? Why have you invested so much in this sport? What is it you love about it that keeps you coming back and keeps you seemingly doing more and more for the sport?
I like the sport. It's my chosen hobby. I like the people. If it's a volunteer sport. If you don't have the volunteers, you don't have the sport. And I've seen so many people come and go in this sport. I couldn't tell you how many people I've, become really good friends with, but life happens. They come, they're really, really active. They burn out, they're gone. And, if we continue that cycle, the sport doesn't grow. It becomes stagnant and it becomes non-existent. So someone has got to take the helm and continue going, and I try, I answer every question. I average 4 or 5 emails per week, new shooters, clubs, various questions, rules questions, so on and so forth. I take the time to answer those questions. You got to foster the sport to continue to grow. And if I don't do it, who's going to do it?
Right.
You know, I don't see not very many people is wanting to raise their hand to set up an hour before the match, expect to shoot well, and stay an hour and a half after the match and tear down. I mean, plus, got all the scoring and everything else. I mean, it's a lot of work. And if you don't do it, you can't depend on other people. I've always been a self-motivated person. I don't expect much from anybody. I'll just do it myself. So it's a character flaw, being a type A personality, I guess.
I started to say it's that type A personality again.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for everything you're doing for the sport. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show. Again, thank you for your service. And I look forward to talking to you in the future and hopefully running across you on the range.
Well, hey, thank you very much for having me.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.